The sky trembles, rays of golden light crash against black fire in a symphony of cosmic destruction. An angelic figure in resplendent armor, Michael, rises through the air, his sword of pure light extended toward a monstrous creature that defies description. Where an angel should have been, now stands a colossal dragon, with blood-red scales, with 7 heads roaring in unison, and 10 horns glowing with usurped power. Michael, in a voice that echoes throughout creation, "Lucifer, look what you have become." The dragon, once the most beautiful of angels, turns his 7 heads toward Michael. In his eyes burns a fire that is not of this world. The great red dragon, in a voice like 1,000 thunderclaps, "I am no longer Lucifer. I am the power you never dared to claim." One of the dragon's heads unleashes a torrent of black fire that turns light into darkness. Michael raises his sword. The original perfection. At the dawn of eternity, when time had not yet begun its inexorable march, there existed a realm of absolute perfection that transcended all mortal understanding. The sky stretched into infinite dimensions, constructed of solidified light and crystallized harmonies, where every structure floated in perfect synchrony with divine will. At the center of this magnificence rose the celestial throne, source of all light and life, from which emanated a presence so powerful and loving that it held all creation together. Around this throne, in concentric circles of eternal adoration, moved the angelic hosts in incalculable numbers. Seraphim, 6-winged beings whose sole function was to proclaim divine holiness, flew continuously around the throne, chanting "Holy, holy, holy," with voices that made the very structures of heaven vibrate. The cherubim, guardians of divine glory, protected the sacred entrances with swords of fire that were never extinguished. The archangels oversaw the different spheres of heavenly administration, each perfect in their assigned role. But among all these magnificent beings, one shone with a splendor that outshone all the others. His name was Lucifer, which means Lightbringer, or morning star, and he had been created as the anointed cherub, the closest to the divine throne, the most beautiful, wise, and powerful of all angelic creation. In this word, the anointed cherub, Lucifer was the masterpiece of angelic creation. His beauty transcended all earthly description. His face reflected divine glory, with such perfection that gazing upon him was like contemplating a fragment of heaven itself. His wings, woven with pure light, spread majestically, and his body was adorned with every precious stone imaginable: sardius, topaz, diamond, turquoise, onyx, jasper, sapphire, carbuncle, and emerald, all set in the finest gold. His intelligence was so vast that he could comprehend the deepest mysteries of creation. His wisdom was so profound that other angels came to him for advice. His power was so great that with a word he could move celestial mountains and direct cosmic forces. Even more extraordinary was his musical gift. Celestial music emanated naturally from Lucifer, as if he had been created to be the choir master of all creation. When he raised his voice in worship, all the angels joined in perfect harmony, creating symphonies that made the stars dance and filled every corner of the sky with melodies of praise. For untold eons, Lucifer fulfilled his role with absolute perfection. He led heavenly worship with unparalleled mastery, administered vast regions of the divine realm with impeccable wisdom, and served as the right-hand man in the execution of divine plans. The other archangels respected and admired him. Michael, the great celestial warrior, valued his counsel in matters of cosmic strategy. Gabriel, the divine messenger, appreciated his wisdom in interpreting divine mysteries. Raphael, the celestial healer, admired his ability to restore harmony where there was discord. Uriel, the guardian of divine justice, respected his understanding of eternal principles. But at some point in eternity, something began to change in Lucifer's perfect heart. It was a change so subtle at first that not even he fully perceived it. It began as a simple contemplation of his own magnificence, something that initially seemed natural and even appropriate for a being of his stature. When he gazed into the celestial crystals that reflected his image, Lucifer began to linger longer than necessary. He contemplated his beauty with growing fascination, marveling at the perfection of every feature, the brilliance of every precious stone that adorned him, the majesty of his bearing. "Truly I am magnificent," he thought as he observed himself. "The Almighty has placed within me incomparable beauty. I am, without a doubt, the most glorious of all his creatures." These thoughts, which at first seemed like simple objective observations, began to take on a different tone. The admiration for his own perfection gradually transformed into something more dangerous. Pride. Pride is the most subtle of all corruptions, because it disguises itself as virtue. It presents itself as a legitimate recognition of one's own worth, as a proper appreciation of the gifts received. But at its core, pride is the elevation of the self above all else, including the Creator himself. Lucifer began to compare himself not only to other angels, but to God himself. "Why should I bow down?" he wondered in the privacy of his thoughts. "Why should I serve when I possess such beauty, such wisdom, such power? Am I not also worthy of worship?" These dangerous thoughts didn't remain confined to Lucifer's heart for long. Pride, by its nature, seeks external validation, seeking to convert others to its distorted perspective. Lucifer began to share his reflections with other angels, but in a careful and subtle way. He didn't openly express his rebellion, but rather planted seeds of doubt and discontent. "Have you never wondered," he would say to Beelzebub, a powerful angel in his inner circle, "why some of us have higher positions than others? Is this system of hierarchy really fair?" To Asmodeus, known for his seductive beauty, he would whisper, "You possess magnificent gifts, brother. Why must you limit yourself to obeying orders? Don't you deserve more freedom to use your abilities?" To Belial, the warrior angel, he would hint, "Your power is formidable. You could command legions, rule territories. Why settle for being merely a soldier in someone else's army?" These conversations multiplied and spread. Lucifer discovered he had a natural talent for persuasion, an ability to make others see things from his perspective. His charisma, originally intended to lead heavenly worship, became a tool of intellectual seduction. The angels who listened to his words began to experience something they had never felt before: discontent. For the first time in their perfect existence, they began to question their place in the divine order, to desire something different from what they had. The decisive moment came when Lucifer, after eons of contemplation and planning, made the decision that would change the course of all cosmic history. In the solitude of his private chambers, standing before the Mount of Congregation, where the angels gathered for special ceremonies, Lucifer spoke the words that would seal his fate. "I will ascend into heaven," he declared in a voice that echoed throughout the celestial realm. "I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." His voice grew louder, more defiant. "I will sit on the Mount of Congregation, in the farthest reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds." And finally, with a declaration that shook the very foundations of heaven, "I will be like the Most High." These 5 declarations, known as Lucifer's "I will be's," represented the first conscious and deliberate rebellion against divine authority in the entire history of creation. These were not words spoken in a moment of passion or confusion, but the culmination of a long and deliberate process of internal corruption. With these words, Lucifer crossed a line from which there would be no return. He was no longer simply a proud angel. He had become an active rebel against divine order. Once Lucifer had made his decision, he devoted all his considerable intelligence and charisma to recruiting followers for his cause. It was not a difficult task. He had been preparing the ground for a long time. Beelzebub was the first to openly join the rebellion. "Master," he said to Lucifer, "I have reflected on your words, and you are right. We deserve more than an existence of simple obedience. I am with you." Asmodeus followed soon after, seduced by the promises of freedom and power. "If we are to be free," he declared, "we must be willing to fight for that freedom." Belial brought his military experience to bear. "I have contacts among the warrior angels. Many are willing to follow you if you promise them the opportunity to use their power without restraint." The rebellion spread like wildfire. Angels of all ranks began to join Lucifer's cause. Some were seduced by promises of power, others by the desire for freedom, others simply by the charismatic allure of Lucifer himself. Lucifer's recruitment techniques were sophisticated and varied. To the intellectual angels, he spoke of freedom of thought and the limitless exploration of knowledge. To the warriors, he promised glorious battles and magnificent conquests. To the artists, he offered the opportunity to create without divine restriction. But in all cases, the central message was the same: you deserve more than you have. You are too magnificent to be mere servants. You can be like God. The faithful archangels were not blind to what was happening. Gabriel was the first to perceive the magnitude of the problem when Lucifer openly expressed his rebellious thoughts to him. "Michael," Gabriel told him with deep concern, "something terrible is happening. Lucifer has expressed thoughts that should not exist in a heavenly mind. He speaks of being worthy of worship, of deserving more than serving." Michael, the great heavenly warrior, felt as if his heart had been pierced with an ice sword. "Lucifer, our brother Lucifer, that is impossible." "I fear it is not only possible, but it is already happening," Gabriel replied, "and he is not alone. I have observed changes in many other angels. There is a restlessness, a discontent that has never before existed in heaven." Raphael, when he learned of the situation, was deeply saddened. How can perfection corrupt itself? How can good choose to turn to evil? Uriel, always the sternest in matters of justice, was more direct. If Lucifer has chosen rebellion, he must face the consequences. Divine justice cannot be mocked, not even by the most beautiful of cherubim. The faithful archangels attempted to reason with Lucifer and his followers. Michael, heartbroken, approached his fallen brother. "Lucifer," he pleaded, "what are you doing? You are perfect, beautiful, powerful. Why destroy all this out of pride?" But Lucifer had already gone too far to back down. "Michael," he replied with a cold smile, "you have always been the obedient soldier, but some of us aspire to more than simple obedience. Some of us deserve to rule, not serve. We are not equal to the Creator," Michael insisted. "To claim to be is madness." "Madness," Lucifer retorted. "I call it legitimate ambition. Join me, Michael. Together we could rule heaven as equals." When Michael rejected the offer in horror, Lucifer knew the line had been drawn. There would be no more negotiations, no more attempts at reconciliation. This would be war. What followed was the first conflict in the history of creation, a war that transcended all mortal understanding. It was not a physical battle like those known to earthly beings, but a clash between spiritual forces of cosmic magnitude. Heaven itself was divided into two camps. On one side were the loyal hosts, commanded by Michael, angels who had chosen to remain faithful to the Creator no matter the cost. On the other were the rebels led by Lucifer, who represented 1/3 of the entire angelic population. Preparation for the battle was intense. Michael organized the loyal hosts into perfect formations, each angel knowing exactly their role in defending divine order. Gabriel coordinated heavenly communications, ensuring that every command was transmitted instantly across the vast expanses of heaven. Raphael set up healing stations to care for the wounded. Uriel handled military justice, establishing the principles under which the war would be conducted. Lucifer, for his part, proved to be a formidable strategist. He organized his rebel forces with the same intelligence he had used to direct heavenly worship. Belial commanded the warrior legions, training them in new forms of spiritual combat. Beelzebub handled logistics. Asmodeus directed propaganda operations. When the time of confrontation finally arrived, the two forces met on the celestial plains, vast expanses of crystallized light where the echo of every word, every movement, resonated throughout creation. Michael stepped forward, his heart broken, but his resolve unwavering. "Lucifer," he shouted across the battlefield, "my brother, there is still time. Lay down your weapons and return home." Lucifer emerged from the rebel ranks, and his transformation was evident to all. Though still beautiful, there was a darkness in him that had not existed before, a subtle but undeniable corruption of his original perfection. "Michael," he replied, his voice echoing like distant thunder, "ever the obedient soldier, don't you tire of being a mere pawn in another's game?" "It is not a game," Michael retorted with profound sadness. "It is love. It is order. It is the harmony that holds all creation together." "Harmony?" Lucifer exclaimed with contempt. "You call slavery harmony? I come to offer freedom to all angels. Join me, Michael. Together we could rule heaven as equals." "We are not equal to the Creator, brother," Michael replied, pain evident in his voice, "and to pretend to be is the root of all destruction." Lucifer's expression hardened, and his voice became terrible. "Then you will die a slave." With those words he drew a sword of black fire, forged from his own rebellion. Michael, with evident pain but unwavering determination, drew his sword of pure light. "For the glory of the Most High," Michael shouted, "for freedom." Lucifer roared back. The two armies collided with a thunderous crash that shook the very foundations of heaven. The celestial war began with an intensity beyond description. Bolts of divine power streaked through the celestial air, like lightning of impossible colors. When the lightsabers clashed with the rebel firearms, they created explosions that either gave birth to new stars or extinguished them forever. Michael and Lucifer clashed in the center of the battlefield, their swords clashing with such force that each impact sent shockwaves through multiple dimensions. Their combat technique was perfect, for they had been created as celestial warriors of the highest order. Lucifer attacked with surging fury, his sword of black fire tracing deadly arcs through the air. His combat style had changed. Where once there had been grace and precision, now there was brutality and desperation. "You could have been free, Michael," he shouted as he launched a series of devastating attacks. "You could have been a god." Michael parried each attack with his sword of pure light, his technique remaining perfect, despite the emotional pain he felt fighting his fallen brother. "I am already what I must be," he would respond, counter-attacking with precise, controlled movements. "A servant of the Most High, and that is more glorious than any throne you can imagine." Around them the battle raged with cosmic intensity. Gabriel led squadrons of messenger angels, coordinating aerial attacks that resembled dances of deadly light. Raphael moved across the battlefield like a healing lightning bolt, restoring wounded angels while dodging demonic attacks. Uriel fought Belial in a duel that put the battles of the Titans to shame. Their swords created sparks that became comets, and their every movement generated gravitational waves that altered the course of distant planets. But as the battle continued, something began to change in Lucifer. His frustration grew with every attack Michael blocked, with every counter-attack he had to dodge. Michael's technical perfection, his unwavering faith, his seemingly endless stamina, all of this fueled Lucifer's anger to levels he'd never experienced before. After what seemed like eons of combat, Lucifer began to realize that he could not defeat Michael with conventional technique. His brother was too skilled, too strong, too pure. Despair began to take hold of him. "No," Lucifer roared, taking several steps back. "I cannot be defeated. I am the most powerful of all the angels." Michael lowered his sword slightly, hoping his brother would reconsider. "Lucifer, you can still stop. You can still repent." But instead of repentance, something terrible began to happen within Lucifer. His wounded pride, his uncontrolled anger, his utter refusal to be defeated, all of this began to manifest physically. "If I cannot win as an angel," he cried, his voice distorting, "then I will become something more powerful." His angelic form began to change. His beautiful face elongated, his perfect features hardened and became more bestial. His eyes, which had shone with heavenly light, now burned with hellish fire. His skin, which had been like solidified light, began to harden and become covered with scales that gleamed with a sinister glow. "Lucifer!" "No!" Michael cried in horror. "Do not allow pride to corrupt you completely." But Lucifer could no longer hear. His transformation accelerated. His arms extended and became membranous wings of colossal size. His neck elongated, becoming serpentine yet massive. His body grew to monstrous proportions, maintaining a terrifying majesty reminiscent of his original angelic beauty, but perverted into something entirely different. The precious stones that had adorned his angelic form fused with his new scales, creating a hypnotic pattern of constantly shifting colors. His wings, now enormous and powerful, generated cosmic winds with every movement. When the transformation was complete, where the most beautiful of angels had once stood, now stood a creature that defied description. A dragon of cosmic proportions, with 7 heads and 10 horns, each head crowned with diadems that parodied divine authority. Lucifer's transformation into the great red dragon was a moment that fundamentally changed the nature of the conflict. It was no longer simply a war between angels. It was now a battle between divine order and primordial chaos made manifest. The dragon that had been Lucifer rose above the battlefield, his presence so massive it dwarfed heavenly mountains. His 7 heads moved independently, each with its own intelligence, but united in malevolent purpose. His eyes were like pits of liquid fire, and when he opened his jaws, one could see an abyss that seemed to extend to the very heart of darkness. "Behold," the dragon roared in a voice like the sound of 1,000 thunderclaps, "behold what I have chosen to become. If I cannot be worshipped as an angel, I will be feared as a dragon." His massive and powerful tail stretched across 1/3 of the sky, and with a single sweep, he swept up 1/3 of the stars, hurling them toward Earth like grains of sand. Michael, though shocked by his brother's transformation, did not flinch. Instead, his own form began to glow with a brighter light, his celestial armor blazing like a miniature sun. "Brother," he said in a voice that echoed throughout the sky, "you have chosen to become the antithesis of everything you were created to be. But I will not allow you to destroy God's creation." What followed was a battle that transcended all previous understanding of conflict. The dragon attacked with a fury that made its previous attacks seem like child's play. Its first head spewed a torrent of fire that was not simply heat, but pure corruption in flame. This fire didn't just burn, it corrupted everything it touched, turning light into darkness, harmony into discord, beauty into horror. Michael rose into the air, his wings generating winds of purity that dispersed the corrupting flames. His sword extended, becoming a blade of pure light that measured hundreds of meters in length. "In the name of the Most High," Michael shouted, launching himself toward the dragon. The dragon's second head tried to catch him in its jaws, but Michael was faster. His sword sliced through the air, leaving a trail of light that temporarily blinded all the dragon's heads. The dragon roared in pain and fury, a sound that caused the very structures of heaven to tremble. His tail whipped like a cosmic whip, trying to strike Michael, but the archangel danced in the air, dodging each attack with supernatural grace. "Coward," roared the dragon's third head, "face me directly." "As you wish," Michael replied, and launched himself directly into the dragon's center. What followed was an exchange of attacks that defied the laws of celestial physics. The dragon attacked with its 7 heads simultaneously, each unleashing different types of attacks: corrupting fire, lightning bolts of pure darkness, winds of despair, screams that could break the will of lesser angels. Michael responded to each attack with perfect precision. His sword multiplied into 7, each blocking the attacks of a different head. When the dragon breathed fire, Michael created shields of light that not only blocked the flames, but purified them and returned them as blessings. The 4th head of the dragon tried a different tactic, launching not a physical attack, but a wave of pure temptation, seeking to corrupt Michael's mind as it had corrupted so many other angels. But Michael had been prepared for this moment since his creation. His mind was like an impregnable fortress, built on the rock of absolute faith. "Your power of seduction has no effect on me," Michael declared. "My loyalty is not based on personal gain, but on true love." Frustrated by his inability to corrupt or defeat Michael, the dragon began to use increasingly desperate tactics. His 10 horns began to glow with evil power, each channeling different aspects of his usurped authority. The dragon's 5th head opened its jaws, and from it emerged not fire but a darkness, so profound it seemed to absorb light itself. This darkness spread across the battlefield, seeking to engulf Michael and blind him. But Michael responded by raising his sword to the sky. "Let there be light," he shouted, and his sword became a beacon that dispersed the darkness like morning mist. The dragon's 6th head attempted a psychological attack, projecting visions of all the angels who had fallen, trying to make Michael feel guilt and despair. "Look what your blind loyalty has caused," he roared. "All these lost brothers, all this suffering, all for serving a tyrant." But Michael, though he felt pain for each fallen angel, did not waver in his resolve. "They chose their destiny, as you chose yours," he replied in a firm voice. "With free will comes responsibility." The dragon's 7th head, the largest and most terrible of all, rose above the others. Its eyes were like black suns, and when it spoke, its voice held echoes of the beauty Lucifer had once possessed, making it all the more disturbing. "Michael, my brother," it said with a parody of its former gentleness, "do you not see the futility of your resistance? I am more powerful now than I ever was as an angel. I have transcended the limitations of my original form. I can offer you the same power." For a moment time seemed to stand still. Michael gazed down at the creature that had been his brother, and his eyes reflected infinite sadness. "Lucifer," he said softly, "I can still see vestiges of who you were in this terrible form you have chosen. But the power you have gained is the power of destruction. You have traded glory for brute force, beauty for terror, love for dominion." The dragon roared with renewed fury. "Then die with your ideal." The great red dragon mustered all its power for a final, desperate attack. Its 7 heads rose in unison, and from each began to emanate a different kind of destructive energy. Its 10 horns glowed with evil power, channeling usurped authorities from different spheres of creation. The 1st head spewed fire that burned not only matter, but the spirit itself. The 2nd expelled ice that froze not only the body but hope. The 3rd emitted lightning bolts that not only wounded but corrupted everything they touched. The 4th breathed winds that not only moved objects but dispersed faith. The 5th projected darkness that not only blinded the eyes but clouded the understanding. The 6th screamed with sounds that not only hurt the ears but broke the will. The 7th, the most terrible, opened its jaws, and from it emerged the void itself, the negation of all existence. All these attacks converged on Michael in a moment of concentrated destruction that threatened to annihilate not only the Archangel, but a significant portion of heaven itself. But Michael did not retreat. Instead, he took up a final battle stance, his sword raised, his armor glowing with light that seemed to come from the throne of God himself. "In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit," he shouted in a voice that echoed throughout creation, "I resist you, Satan." His sword transformed, becoming more than just a weapon. It became the physical manifestation of divine authority, the justice of God made tangible. When the dragon's attacks reached Michael, something extraordinary happened. Instead of being destroyed or corrupted, the archangel absorbed all the attacks into his sword of divine light. The corrupting fire was purified, the hopeless ice melted into waters of life, the evil lightning bolts became blessings, the winds of doubt transformed into breezes of faith, darkness became light, cries of despair became songs of praise, and the void itself was filled with divine presence. "Impossible." The dragon's 7 heads roared in unison. "Nothing is impossible for God," Michael responded, and launched his counterattack. His sword, now charged with purified divine power, extended into a column of light that rose from the battlefield to the heavenly throne itself. With a movement that combined perfect technique with divine authority, Michael attacked. The blow was not intended to destroy the dragon, but to permanently separate it from heaven. The sword cut not through the dragon's flesh, but through its connection to the heavenly realm, through its right to remain in the divine presence. The dragon felt the cut not as physical pain, but as an ontological separation, a fundamental disconnection from the source of all light and life. The great red dragon reeled, its 7 heads roaring in agony that was not physical but spiritual. For the first time since its rebellion had begun, it felt true terror. "No," it shouted with all its heads, "you cannot defeat me. I am Lucifer. I am the most powerful. You were Lucifer," Michael replied with infinite sadness but unwavering determination. "Now you are Satan, the adversary, and your time in heaven is over." Michael raised his sword once more, but this time not to strike, but to pronounce divine judgment. By the authority of the Most High, he declared in a voice that echoed throughout creation, "I cast you out of heaven, along with all who followed you. You no longer have a place among the saints." At that moment, the divine voice resounded throughout heaven, confirming Michael's judgment. "Satan, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your place is no longer in heaven." What followed was a phenomenon beyond physical description. An irresistible force, the divine will itself made manifest, began to drag the dragon and all his followers downward into regions of existence completely separate from the heavenly realm. The great red dragon fought this force with all its considerable power, its wings beating furiously, its claws trying to grasp the heavenly structures, its heads roaring defiance to the bitter end. "This is not over," it cried as it was dragged toward the abyss. "If I cannot attack the Creator directly, I will attack what he loves. I will turn all of creation against him." Michael watched his brothers fall, heartbroken but with the satisfaction of a duty done. "Farewell, Lucifer," he murmured. "May God have mercy on your soul." The dragon's fall was like a cosmic lightning bolt that pierced multiple dimensions of reality. Jesus himself would later testify, "I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning." During the fall, the great red dragon underwent a final transformation. His draconic form, which had been a manifestation of corrupted power, stabilized in his new nature. He was no longer the beautiful Lucifer, nor even the terrible dragon of battle. He had become Satan, the adversary, the prince of darkness. His intelligence remained, but perverted toward evil purposes. His power remained formidable but limited and destined for destruction. His beauty had transformed into a terrible majesty that inspired fear rather than worship. When he finally came to rest in the infernal regions, he arose not as the angel he had been, nor as the dragon he had chosen to become, but as something entirely new and terrible, the sworn enemy of all that was good, pure, and divine. His followers, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Belad, Anthodiath, Belial, and all the other rebel angels, underwent similar transformations. They had become demons, beings whose angelic nature had been completely corrupted and perverted. The hellish regions where Satan and his followers fell were the complete antithesis of the heaven they had lost. Where once there was light, now there was darkness. Where once there was harmony, now there was discord. Where once there was perfect beauty, now there was desolation. Satan slowly rose, completely transformed. His form could change at will, but his essence remained corrupted. He was still powerful, still intelligent, but everything about him had been twisted toward evil purposes. "Master," Beelzebub said in his new distorted voice, "we have lost everything. Heaven, our beauty, our original purpose." Satan looked at him with eyes that now glowed with malevolent fire. "We have not lost everything," he replied with a terrible smile. "We still have our power, though corrupted. We still have our intelligence, though perverted. And we have something more valuable than anything we have lost: our hatred. What shall we do now?" Asmodeus asked. "We will wait," Satan replied with malevolent determination. "And when the Almighty creates something new, something he especially loves, then we will attack. If I cannot attack the Creator directly, I will attack through what he loves." In heaven, after the expulsion of the dragon and its followers, an immediate restoration took place. The damage caused by the battle was instantly healed. The damaged structures were rebuilt, and heavenly harmony was restored. Michael approached the divine throne, his sword now sheathed, his armor still shining with the glow of victory. "Lord," he said with profound humility, "the rebellion has been quelled. The dragon and its followers have been cast out." The divine voice responded with a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. "Well done, Michael, good and faithful servant. You have defended my honor and protected my kingdom, but the story does not end here. The dragon will seek revenge, and when it does, you will be ready to face it again." Gabriel approached Michael, his face reflecting awe and renewed respect. "Brother, you have fought the very dragon of the apocalypse and prevailed." "It was not I who prevailed," Michael replied with characteristic humility. "It was the power of the Most High working through me. I was merely the instrument of his justice." Raphael, who had been healing the wounded angels during the battle, joined them. Lucifer's transformation into a dragon was terrible to behold. To see such beauty corrupt into something so monstrous. "It is the nature of sin," Uriel observed, approaching the group. "It is not content to corrupt the heart. It eventually corrupts the entire being." Lucifer chose to become the antithesis of all he was created to be. An indeterminate amount of time passed on the cosmic scales before Satan had the opportunity to exact his revenge. During this period, he and his demons established their kingdom in the infernal regions, organizing hierarchies of evil and perfecting arts of corruption and destruction. But then, something new appeared in creation. A physical world called Earth, and on it, a new life form created in the image of God himself. These beings, called humans, were placed in a garden of perfect beauty called Eden. When Satan observed these new beings, Adam and Eve, he immediately recognized an opportunity. They were innocent, perfect in their original state, but unlike the angels, they had been created with physical bodies and placed in a material world. More importantly, they had been endowed with free will, the same capacity for choice that had enabled the angelic rebellion. "So this is the new favorite creation of the Almighty," Satan murmured as he watched the human pair from the shadows. "These humans, made in his image," he says. He carefully studied Adam and Eve, analyzing their strengths and weaknesses, looking for the perfect entry point for his corruption. "If I can't attack the Creator directly," he told himself with growing malice, "I'll attack through them. I'll make them fall as I did, and then he will know how it feels to lose what he loves most." Satan developed his plan with the same intelligence he had used to seduce a third of the angels. He knew he couldn't approach humans in his true demonic form. That would have immediately terrified and alerted. Instead, he chose to disguise himself as a serpent, the most cunning of all the beasts of the field. He waited patiently until Eve found herself alone near the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the only tree in the entire garden from which God had forbidden eating. "Did God really say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden'?" he asked in a seductive voice, using the same technique he had used with the angels. Beginning with a question that would sow doubt, Eve, in her innocence, answered honestly, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden." but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden. God has said, "You shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die." Satan smiled malicious. It was the perfect moment to plant the same seed of rebellion that had corrupted him. "You shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The same words that had echoed in her own heart eons ago. You will be like God. The promise of equality with the Creator, the seduction of pride, the temptation to transcend the boundaries set by divine authority. Eve looked at the fruit with new curiosity. For the first time in her perfect existence, she experienced desire for something that had been forbidden. The fruit seemed good to eat, pleasing to the eyes, and desirable to make one wise. She took some of the fruit and ate. Then she gave it to Adam, who was with her, and he ate too. The moment the fruit touched her lips, something fundamental changed in human nature. Innocence was instantly lost, replaced by a terrible knowledge of good and evil. Their eyes were opened, as the serpent had promised, but what they saw was not the divinity they had expected, but their own nakedness, their own vulnerability, their own separation from the perfection they had known. Satan observed his triumph with terrible satisfaction. He had accomplished what seemed impossible, to corrupt God's perfect creation, to introduce sin into a world that had been completely pure. "Yes," he exclaimed with malevolent glee, "corruption spreads. Now the Almighty's favorite creation has also fallen." But his celebration was cut short by the divine voice, which echoed throughout the garden. "Satan," the serpent froze in terror, "you have succeeded in corrupting my children." The divine voice continued, and in it was infinite sadness, but also unwavering determination. "But your victory is temporary. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. It will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel." Satan felt a chill of terror at these words. He had expected threats of immediate punishment, but this was something different, a prophecy, a promise that his victory would finally be reversed. Satan withdrew from Eden, disturbed by divine words but determined to continue his war against the Creator. Over the centuries that followed, he worked tirelessly to spread corruption throughout humanity. He established systems of evil, inspired wars, promoted idolatry, and sowed discord in every aspect of the human experience. But always, in the back of his mind, echoed the words of prophecy. "One will come who will undo all that you have made." He carefully observed each human generation, looking for signs of this promised Redeemer. When men of great power or wisdom were born, Satan wondered if they would be the ones to fulfill the prophecy. He worked to corrupt or destroy anyone who might pose a threat to his dominion. Generation after generation, humanity sank deeper into sin. The world became filled with violence, corruption, and evil. Satan rejoiced in every act of cruelty, every war, every betrayal. It seemed he had definitively won, but the prophecy remained, like a sword suspended over his head, reminding him that his victory was neither complete nor permanent. After millennia of waiting and watching, something unprecedented occurred in cosmic history. The same Creator, the Most High against whom Satan had fought from the beginning, became human. The news reached Satan through his demonic spies. A virgin had conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, and the child who was born was named Emmanuel, God with us. Impossible, Satan roared when he received the news. The Most High cannot become human. It's a contradiction. But as he watched the child grow, Satan began to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. This was not just another prophet or human leader. This was God himself in human form, experiencing mortal life from within. Jesus, as he was called, grew in wisdom and stature, but Satan could sense the divine power residing within him. He was fully human, but also fully divine. He was vulnerable to temptation like any human, yet possessed the perfect nature of God. When Jesus began his public ministry, Satan decided to confront him directly. If this was truly the fulfillment of prophecy, then he must be defeated before he could complete his mission. After Jesus fasted for 40 days in the desert, Satan appeared to tempt him, using the same tactics that had been effective against Eve and a third of the angels. "If you are the Son of God," he said, appealing to pride, "command that these stones become bread." But Jesus responded with the scriptures, "Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Satan then took him to the pinnacle of the temple. "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will give His angels charge over you, and they will bear you up in their hands, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Again Jesus responded with the word of God. "It is also written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Finally, Satan showed him all the kingdoms of the world. "All these things I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." This was the ultimate temptation, the same one that had corrupted Lucifer, the desire for power and worship. But Jesus responded with absolute authority. "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and Him only shall you serve." Satan retreated, defeated but not destroyed. For the first time since his fall, he had encountered a human being who was completely immune to his temptations. During the 3 years of Jesus' ministry, Satan worked tirelessly to oppose him. He inspired religious leaders to reject him, stirred the multitudes to turn against him, and sowed discord even among his disciples. But with every miracle Jesus performed, every demon he cast out, every life he transformed, the kingdom of darkness weakened. Satan began to understand that he was losing the war that had begun in heaven. "This Jesus," he told his demons, "is undoing everything we've built. He's healing the sick, setting captives free, forgiving sins. We must stop him." But every attempt to stop Jesus failed. His power was too great, his purpose too pure, his connection to the Father too perfect. When Jesus cast out demons, they cried out in recognition of his authority, "We know who you are, the Holy One of God." When he healed the sick, crowds followed him. When he taught, he spoke with an authority no human teacher had ever possessed. Satan despaired. With each passing day, more people believed in Jesus. His kingdom of darkness was shaken by the light radiated by this man God. Finally, Satan believed he had found the perfect opportunity. He inspired Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, to betray Jesus. He moved the religious leaders to have him arrested, tried, and condemned. On the night of the betrayal, Satan entered Judas's heart, filling it with greed and resentment. 30 pieces of silver, he whispered. "That's all you need to betray your master." When he saw Jesus arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, Satan felt triumphant. When he saw him scourged, mocked and condemned, his malevolent joy grew. When he saw Jesus hanging on the cross at Calvary, Satan initially felt completely victorious. At last he murmured with satisfaction, "The chosen one the Almighty spoke of, and look how he ends, hanging on a tree like a common criminal." Darkness covered the earth from the 6th hour to the 9th. Satan interpreted this as a sign of his victory. The Son of God was dying, and with him, all hope of redemption for humanity. But when Jesus spoke his last words, something fundamental changed in the cosmos. "It is finished," Jesus cried in a voice that echoed throughout creation. At that moment, Satan felt something he had not experienced since his original fall. True terror. An earthquake shook the earth. The veil of the temple was torn from top to bottom, and the very spiritual forces that governed reality reorganized. "No," Satan murmured in growing horror. "It cannot." He began to understand that what had seemed like his greatest victory was actually his most complete defeat. Jesus' death had not been the end of the divine mission, but its culmination. On the cross, Jesus had paid the price for all the sins of humanity, had satisfied the demands of divine justice, and had opened the way for reconciliation between God and man. 3 days after the crucifixion, the unthinkable happened. Jesus rose from the dead. Satan desperately approached the empty tomb, needing to confirm his worst fears. The angels guarding the entrance confronted him with authority he had not felt since the days of the heavenly war. "Stop, Prince of Darkness," the guardian angel commanded. "You have no power here." "Where is he?" Satan asked in despair. "Where is he you call Jesus? He has risen." As he said, the angel replied with triumphant joy, "Death could not hold him." Satan retreated, finally understanding the full magnitude of his defeat. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The woman's descendant had permanently wounded his head. Jesus had done what seemed impossible. He had lived a perfectly sinless life, died as a sacrifice for the sins of humanity, and risen again, forever conquering the power of death and hell. During the 40 days following the resurrection, Jesus appeared to his disciples, teaching them and preparing them for the mission ahead. Satan watched helplessly as the message of salvation began to spread. When Jesus ascended to heaven, Satan knew his defeat was complete. The path back to God was open to all humanity. He could no longer claim human souls as his own. Now they would have the option to choose redemption. In heaven, the archangels rejoiced as never before since Lucifer's expulsion. "Lord," Michael exclaimed with indescribable joy, "the plan of redemption has been fulfilled. Humanity can be restored. The prophecy has been fulfilled." Added Gabriel, "The descendant of the woman has bruised the head of the serpent." Raphael, whose nature was to heal and restore, especially rejoiced. Healing is available to all who seek it. What was lost can be recovered. Uriel, the guardian of justice, proclaimed, "Justice and mercy have been found. The price of sin has been paid." The divine voice resounded throughout heaven with infinite joy. "Yes, my children, what was lost in a garden has been recovered on a cross. What Satan corrupted with lies, my Son has restored with truth." The angels who had remained faithful during the great rebellion now saw the full wisdom of God's plan. Lucifer's fall, terrible as it was, had served to demonstrate the depth of God's love and the lengths to which he was willing to go to redeem his fallen creature. Although decisively defeated, Satan did not completely surrender. He returned to his kingdom of darkness, where his demons anxiously awaited him. "Master," Beelzebub asked, "your face, what has happened?" "We have been defeated," Satan admitted with deep bitterness. "Not completely destroyed, but decisively defeated." "How is this possible?" Asmodeus inquired. "The Most High became man," Satan explained with obvious pain. "He lived among them without sin, died for them as a perfect sacrifice, and rose again, conquering death. He has opened a way back for all mankind. So all is lost?" Beel asked. Satan reflected for a moment, and then his expression hardened with renewed malevolent determination. "Not everything. We still have time before the final judgment. We can still harm, corrupt, tempt, destroy. If I can't win the war, at least I'll take as many with me as possible." And so began the final phase of Satan's rebellion, a desperate campaign to drag as many souls as possible into destruction, knowing that his own fate was sealed. Over the centuries that followed, Satan intensified his efforts. He persecuted the early church, inspired heresies, promoted division among believers, and worked tirelessly to prevent the spread of the gospel message. But for every soul he managed to corrupt, thousands more found salvation in Christ. His kingdom of darkness steadily shrank, while the kingdom of light expanded throughout the world. Prophetic visions reveal the definitive end of Satan's story. There will come a day when time itself will end, when all creation will be judged, and when divine justice will be fully manifested. On that day, Satan will be released for a brief time, for one last desperate rebellion. He will rally all the nations of the earth for a final battle against God's people. But this last rebellion will be instantly crushed by divine power. Then Satan and all his demons will be cast into the lake of fire, prepared for the devil and his angel. Their rebellion, which began in the halls of heaven, will end in eternal confinement. Cursed are you, Most High, Satan will cry as he is cast to his final doom. Cursed be your mercy, cursed be your mercy, cursed be your justice. But his curses will be lost in the roar of eternal fire, and he will never again be able to corrupt, tempt, or destroy. The great red dragon, who had once been Lucifer, the light-bearer, will have reached the end of his terrible journey. His pride, which had led him to rebel against his Creator, will finally have led him to complete destruction. After the final judgment, a new creation will be revealed, a new heaven and a new earth, where there will be no more mourning, no more pain, no more death. Redeemed humanity will walk in perfect harmony with its Creator, and the angels who remained faithful will rejoice in the complete restoration of divine order. The archangels will contemplate the finished work with awe and gratitude. In the end, Michael will say, "Good has triumphed over evil, light has overcome darkness," Gabriel will add, "and healing has replaced corruption." Raphael will proclaim, "Justice and mercy have met forever." Uriel will conclude with profound satisfaction. The divine voice will once again resound throughout the restored creation. "Behold, I am making all things new. The first heaven and the first earth have passed away, and there is no more sea. There will be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, nor pain, for the former things have passed away." In this new creation, the story of Lucifer's fall will be remembered, not as a senseless tragedy, but as part of a larger plan that definitively demonstrated that love is stronger than hate, that humility is more powerful than pride, and that light always conquers darkness. Redeemed human beings, now glorified and forever free from the power of sin, will join the faithful angels in eternal worship. Their voices will rise in choirs that make even Lucifer's original music seem like a whisper in comparison. "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty," they will sing in perfect harmony. "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing."